Hey everybody, welcome to the second semester, the last half of 8th grade. We're going to get started and hopefully you guys have learned some things from the first semester and can really tough it out for this last half of the school year. Whether you're working remotely or in the classroom, hopefully everybody's going to put maximum effort into everything. So we are about to start a new unit, and our new unit is literary essay writing. And the thing about writing a literary essay is that you have to have something to write about, obviously. And we're going to explore how you find something to write about and what you should be thinking about when you read a short story or you read a novel or those sorts of things. And as you're thinking about that, you also need to think about, well, what is the purpose of this piece of literature? Why did the author write it in the first place? What does the author have to say? And remember, authors like to make people think. So they're not going to come out and say what they want you to think. They have a purpose in mind, and part of your job as a reader is to figure out what their purpose is. And, sometimes we come up with purposes that the author didn't even intend. So we're going to kind of explore that a little bit. So we are going to get started with a short story. And we're going to talk about this short story as far as themes go as an example. Because what we really want to do is we want to start thinking about the themes from the outsiders and come up with some theories about the outsiders so that you can explore, whether you're exploring what the author's purpose was or something interesting you found in the novel as it spoke to you. Obviously, you have to have the novel read. And if you haven't finished reading The Outsiders, this is the time and this is the reason that it should be done. Because for the next 3 weeks or so, we are going to be writing about The Outsiders. We're going to be going over things like different theories. And once you decide on a theory, we're going to get started on how you structure your essay. We're going to get started on how you cite evidence and those sorts of things. So we're going to kind of go at it little by little. And by the end of the unit, you're going to find that you have yourself a significant, hefty piece of writing. And it's not something that you just sit down and you just write out 5 pages of whatever. This is something that we're going to work on bit by bit, piece by piece. And because we're using computers, which is going to make this whole system a lot easier, you're going to find that revising is not as big a deal as you think it might be. Okay, when we were writing on paper and pencil, revising is a bigger deal. If you needed to move a paragraph, you had to rewrite everything, and we don't have to do that because we can use our word processing. So for this week, if you can look on the page, obviously first thing is our ELA daily review. Just like we do each week, these are concepts that we should know as 8th graders, and there's some things in here that you may or may not know. Remember, you use Google if you need it. If you are a remote student and you're having problems with any of the concepts here, then get in touch with me. Send me an email. I can meet with people on Wednesdays because I don't have students on Wednesdays. So that's for remote students. You guys that are seeing me in person, if you're one of my B students and I don't see you till Thursday or Friday, save up your questions and ask them in class when you're in class on Thursday, Friday. My Monday, Tuesday students, we get started on this together in the classroom. Everybody else should be working on these daily. You can do it all at once if you want, but, each one is just a short, light piece. I mean, you can spend 20 minutes working on the whole thing, or you can spend, 5 minutes a class working on each section. So that's due Friday. We are going to be doing NWEA testing this week. So this literary essay session is going to be, I'm going to be making it due at the end of the week, but we are focusing mainly this week on NWEA testing. So, okay. So literary essay session 1. So in our unit, we're going to be learning how to respond to character and theorizing about a theme. And we're going to be using The Outsiders for our final essay. but we're going to start learning about how to find themes and how to make theories about what we read using other materials. And I do have a short story that you need to read. So the short story is called The Gift of the Magi. And it's right up here. It's the very top piece. So before you can do any of the other stuff, you must have this read. Okay, so I'm not going to do the reading for you. I will tell you that if you search on YouTube, you might be able to find an audiobook version of it. But be careful, because not all of the versions are the same. We want it to be this version that I have up here. Okay, so I've already kind of created a version. You're going to notice some of these words I've highlighted. These are words that I assume you might have some difficulty with, okay? But you might not. But the words that I've highlighted are words that you might have some issues with. So one of the things that you do, obviously, is look them up. Now, you're going to discover that a few of these words you can't look up in Google Docs. So I think like imputation, if you highlight it and right-click on it and go to define, I don't believe there is a definition for this one. Oh, I guess there is. So you will find definitions for them on here. Hopefully, you can find all of them, but if you can't, then you can always use a different source to look these words up. Okay, and one of the things that I like to do, and I did an example right here, like the word mendicancy, what I did was I looked it up and I just wrote down the definition over here. So I highlighted it and then I clicked on add a comment. So that's a way for you to add comments to the side. So if you want to write down what the word imputation means, or parsimony, then you can write them over here on the side. Okay, so step one, read the story. This is actually a very popular story. This has been around for many, many years. It's been read by most people that go through English classes in middle school. So it's a good story. It's a story that I'm not going to read to you, but we are going to talk about it. So it is a short story. Okay, so it's 5 pages long, which, if you're comparing that to a 153-page novel, it's a short story. So first step, read The Gift of the Magi. So I'm going to have you guys go ahead and do that. All right. Once you're done that, I don't want to go back there. So our literary essay unit, guys, is we're going to be talking about The Gift of the Magi, and we are going to be talking about The Outsider. So we want to talk about finding theories in literature and writing about them. That's basically what this is all about. And we use a lot of different ways to develop theories. And one of the first things that you're going to learn how to do is to start thinking about what it is you think the author is trying to accomplish in their story. Okay, so the teaching point for our first session. Literary essayists write and talk about a text in order to draw inferences between a story's characters and its themes. So that's kind of the point that I, as a teacher, want you guys to come away with just in our first session. So a literary essayist is somebody who's writing about what they read. Okay, and in our case, that's us. We're going to be writing about what we've read. So developing theories. So readers develop theories about the author's purpose, and I underlined author's purpose because that is a very important link between you and the author. What does the author want you to get out of the story? Most stories are written for a purpose, and there are multiple purposes in some cases, but it's up to you to develop a theory about what the author's purpose is. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by noticing the author's decisions about character, the plot, the literary devices, such as figurative language. We did this when we were studying poetry. We learned about the literary devices. Why did the author use that group of words in particular? And a lot of times we can come up with a theory about that. And it may agree with what the author's purpose was, or it might not. That's kind of the fun about this. You're the writer, you're the thinker, so your thinking guides your writing, all right? And the author's writing guides your thinking. So there's sort of a chain of events there, all right? So connections. We want you to make connections. You're going to connect what the author's decisions are to draw an inference about the theme. So what is the main theme of this story? And there's not just a main theme. There's many themes. And the author intended some of them, and the author didn't intend some of them. So some of the themes that you'll come up with might not have been something that the author thought about, but it naturally occurred in the story. And we'll find this in The Outsiders as well when we talk about The Outsiders in a little bit more detail. So, The Gift of the Magi, once you're done reading that, as you're reading it, what I'd like you to think about. What are some big ideas that the story seems to be about? What is the story about? What are some things? And I look at it this way. So it says, what are some single word concepts that you think it might be about? And an example I wrote down is love. Maybe it's just a story about two people who are in love. And how do we know that? Well, you read the story and you can kind of figure out what are the things that would contribute to that theory, that the story is about love. But maybe it's about something else. Okay, so there's a whole slew of things that this story could be about. So big ideas: love, sacrifice, selfishness. Can you think of any others after you've finished reading this story? It's a story about two people around Christmas time who are very poor. And they are stuck trying to figure out what to buy each other for Christmas. And that's the main concept of the story. Okay. Now, as we think about The Outsiders, we're going to be spending a lot of time on this, guys. So big ideas in The Outsiders. So now that we've thought about The Gift of the Magi, what are some of the big ideas from The Outsiders? So I want you to think of things like, the whole idea of violence in the story. Violence is a main theme in that story. The idea of social classes, the idea of, somebody like Cherry Valance telling Ponyboy, hey, when you see me at school, if you say hi to me, I might not say hi back, because she's part of a different social group. So those are parts of the themes about the story. So that's what we're going to be thinking about as we go through this. Okay. So as far as what you actually need to do once you've read The Gift of the Magi, for now, until we get a chance to talk about this in person, for some of you, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for your own theories. And what I've done on here is I've given you an example theory that I came up with. So it says finding support for theories, and this is just a teacher example. So this is from The Gift of the Magi. So your theory should include main characters in the story. So on your own or in small groups. If we're in the classroom together, we'll probably be working in small groups. But those of you working remotely obviously are working at home. Fill out the second row considering the gift of the Magi. Your theory should include the main characters in the story. Choose a theory that you feel you can find support from multiple places in the text and perhaps has a larger meaning connected to life. So there's, if something happens more than once in a text, that's a lot of evidence, okay? And then if you can connect it to life in general, then that's even more evidence. So the evidence in the story and your own personal evidence contribute to your theory. Keep track of your findings in the chart below. You may bullet point your evidence, okay? And here's an example. Theory number one. So these are the two characters in the story, Dell and Jim. So Dell and Jim both wanted to give the other the best present possible. That's my theory. Now, how did I come up with that theory? Well, there's a couple of things that I found in the story. For example, here's a quotation from the text. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. So that sounds like it needs to be a very good present, which means the best present possible. And remember, I talked about how they're poor. So coming up with the best present possible for them might not be the best present possible for somebody who has a lot of money. Second piece of evidence that I came up with. For there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. So these are combs that she was looking for her hair, and they were in the window of a shop. Okay, so these are two pieces of evidence from the text. And I could find more if I really, really, really wanted to drive the point home. So here's the meaning that I came up with based on that. Dell and Jim were thinking about the other person. They were being selfless and sacrificial. All right, so that is an idea of a theme, a theory, and the meaning, the possibility of what the meaning of that theory is. And that's one idea. Now, I came up with that one because it's one of the most obvious ones in the story. What I'd like you to do is, it says your group, but this is individual. Come up with your own theory about the story, the meaning. So what sort of meaning do you think this story has, and what is your theory about that meaning? And where in the story can you find support for that meaning? Okay. And this is going to help you. This gives you kind of a basis of something to write about. And that's all you need to do. Fill in these three things. The thinking part is the toughest part. The writing part is the easy part. Okay? So that's your first step. The second step is thinking bigger about the outsiders. So independently select 2 theories you created about the outsiders. Name one that you feel you can support from multiple places in the text and that perhaps has a larger meaning connected to life. Keep track of your findings in the chart below. So I have a spot here for 2 theories. You got theory 1. Let's write theory number 2. Okay. So this is where you need to think about this. So even if you haven't finished reading the book, there are some obvious theories that you might come up with. You might come up with a theory about violence. You know, maybe Ponyboy is the only one in the story that understands that violence isn't the only possibility. Or maybe you want to talk about how one of the other characters feels that violence has to happen. Or maybe you want to talk about social classes and how people that are in different social classes can get along, or maybe they can't get along, or maybe violence always has bad endings. So there's so many things. I mean, there's literally, dozens and dozens, even hundreds of things that you could think about when you're thinking about the outsiders. So you need to come up with 2 theories. So what you could do is think about the big idea word. What are the big idea words about the outsiders that it's about? Okay. And we'll talk more about this, when we can. Those of you that are working remotely, if you want help on this part, let me know. And then maybe on Wednesday, I can have one big Zoom for a bunch of people that need help on this part. Those of you in the classroom, we'll work our way through these. So this is where we're heading, guys. This is all that I'm going to be expecting for now, because we're doing NWEA testing this week. We are going to get into a lot more detail on this as we move on throughout the unit. Okay, so good luck, happy reading, and let me know if you have any questions.